Good morning. My name is Tami Foy, and I'm the Interim Director in the Office of Research Development here at Cal State Fullerton. And I'm here to share some thoughts with you today on the issue of culture on research at Cal State Fullerton. As you know, we are living in a global age, and technology has brought us closer together than we could ever imagine. So today's workshop will basically focus on a new concept. And I want you all to kind of think about this, because I don't think we often think about how culture and research come together in a positive way as well as a negative way sometimes. The learning objectives for today will be, we're going to look at some of the changing demographics in the United States academic research community. We're going to learn about some of the cultural characteristics. We're going to recognize some of the barriers to effective intercultural communication and research development. And we're also going to consider some of the implications of intercultural communication on research development in regards to policy, practices, and people. And lastly, we're going to learn some strategies for successful intercultural communication and research development. So are you ready to go with me? I know you're probably sitting in your office right now, or you're probably at your home, maybe even eating a meal in your pajamas. That's great, right? So just share this time with me, and I hope you get something out of it. So some of the key points also that we're going to touch on today are what's happening in higher ed and research, some trends and patterns and demographics, and also the implications for U.S. academic research communities. According to the Chronicle of Higher Education's Almanac of 2013 and the National Science Foundation's indicators for 2013, the number of new STEM PhDs from U.S. universities has changed quite a bit. For example, the number of U.S. citizens is 25%, non-U.S. citizens comprise 75%. There's 60 to 90% of STEM PhDs are males, depending on the field. 66% of foreign-born U.S. STEM and engineering doctorate students, recipients remain in the U.S. 5 years after receiving their degrees. And I thought that was interesting because if you look in the last 20 years, it has gone from being very diverse and a lot more foreign-born PhD STEM recipients. If you look at the current U.S. faculty members, 73% are white, 24% are minority, 3% are non-resident foreign-born. The percent of full-time faculty that have tenure, 53% are male, 35% are female. And again, that's another interesting dynamic to me because again, if you look at 73% of our faculty in the United States are white and 24 are minority, but now we have a whole big group of new PhDs coming into research that are not U.S. citizens, and they're from very diverse countries. Also, if you look at the U.S. research development professionals, and just so you all are clear what a U.S. research development professional is, that would be me. That would be our AVP of research, anybody that helps in the research enterprise. That is, for example, in the Office of Grants and Contracts, and as well as in the Office of Sponsored Programs. So 90% of them are U.S. citizens, 75% are females, and 75% are monolingual. And the point that I'm trying to make in this data is basically that we have a very diverse set of young folks coming into research, and us older population of folks, we are not very diverse. And so sometimes that can cause conflicts, misunderstandings, and just cultural differences that we don't even realize are cultural differences. Additional research that I received from the National Center for Educational Statistics in 2013 showed that when you look at full professors, associate professors, assistant professors, here's some of the data. So for full professors, 14% are minority, 26% are women. Associate professors, 17% are minorities and 39% are women. Assistant professors, 21% are minorities and 47% are women. So we have a lot more women at the assistant and associate and minorities at those levels. And we have more men, of course, at the full professor level. So that's another issue, I think. That's a whole nother webinar I won't go into today. Some other relevant demographics, I want to just talk about, there's 4 groups that we kind of refer to in this country, and the first group is veterans, and those are people who were born between 1925 and 1945. We have the baby boomers, that's me, 1946 to 1964. We have Generation X, which are people born between 1965 and 1980. And then we have the Generation Y, which are folks born between 1981 and 2000, and we also refer to them as the millennials. I'm not sure what we're going to call this next group of folks coming up. But some interesting facts about these 4 groups as far as who's still in the workforce, I think is worth mentioning. When we look at the veterans, 18.5% of them are still in the workforce. Our baby boomers, 65% of us are still working. Yes, I'm ready to retire, but I'm still here. Generation X, 83% are in the workforce. And as far as our millennials, we have 82%. So that just kind of gives you an idea of the range of folks who are working. And again, those can be issues too, because you have kind of some of the veterans and the baby boomers. And when we're working with some of our younger populations, they have a different way of how they work and their work styles. And so sometimes those can also be a cultural collide, if you will. So when we talk about what makes up culture, I just want to define it so we're all on the same kind of page. But it's basically a group's individual and collective ways of how they think, how they believe, and what they know. And that also includes their shared experiences, consciousness, skills, values, forms of expression, social institutions, and behaviors. And I'm not going to go through the whole list, but I'm just going to read some of these other things that make up culture. I won't read the definitions, but because you all pretty much know these. We have symbols, we have language, which does play a huge part of how we interact with people. And quite often, sometimes we make assumptions about people's languages that isn't true. We think that maybe they're less intelligent, or they might not be able to contribute to a research project because maybe of their language barrier. They might not have as strong as writing skills because of language. And so I think we need to really be careful of the assumptions we make. We have customs and traditions. We have folk ways. We have marriage unions, gender ways, and gender actually does impact culture in a lot of ways, because sometimes we might think that maybe women in STEM and some of the other fields might not be able to contribute in ways that men can. We have sex ways, child rearing ways, naming ways, age ways, death ways, religion. And I think religion is important to mention too, because quite often we have people from religious backgrounds and it impacts their work life. They might not be able to come to work because maybe they're fasting or it's a religious day for them. And so we have to keep that in mind when we're working on a research project, that we respect the customs of others. And they also need to also be responsible to let us know that that's what they're experiencing or going through right now, and they're not just not showing up, or they're not participating in a research project because of the fact of whatever the reason is, but they're not just participating because they forgot or they don't feel like being a part of it. We have also magic ways, which are normative beliefs and practices concerning the supernatural. I didn't want you all to think something weird, so that's why I talked about what that one means. Learning ways, and this is an important one too, because it's the attitudes towards literacy and learning conventional patterns of education. So how we're educated also impacts us on how we do research and how we approach our research. We have dress ways, food ways, sports ways, work ways, and that's our work ethics and work experiences, attitudes toward work and the nature of work. And so if I'm laid back in my job and you're more like, I got to get this done, and you're very project focused, oriented, sometimes you can have conflict with a colleague that you're working on a research grant with. Time and space perceptions are also another big problem. In my culture, we call it colored people's time, which means that often African Americans, not all of us, but some of us have a very laid-back sense of time. So we might show up to a meeting late, or we might come in and be very kind of lackadaisical about something, where you might say, why are they coming into this project like this? We need to get this done, and we need to have this done at certain times, and they might wait till the last minute to do something. So we need to really be mindful that everyone has different time and space perceptions as well. We have order ways, power ways, freedom ways, and so the list just goes on and on. But I just want you all to be mindful of some of those. Then we talk about culture shock. And what is culture shock? And basically it's a common stress reaction that individuals have when they find themselves immersed in an unfamiliar culture. And I just wanted to bring that term up because sometimes when we're working in a very diverse setting, such as Cal State Fullerton, you're going to come across working with people from all different backgrounds, different languages, different customs, and it might be unfamiliar to you or uncomfortable even. And so we have to, I think it could be such a beneficial opportunity though if we approach it in a positive light. As a research development professional myself, we also want to do our best to serve faculty here on campus and meet them where they're at, because every faculty member is in a different place in their research. Some of you all have a concept, some of you all are ready to apply for grants, some have already applied, some are already working on grants, and some are coming back around to apply for additional funding. And we really want to understand ourselves how to interact with faculty from diverse backgrounds. And when we do that, we train our own staff in areas of how to deal with cultural diversity in research, in the areas of gender, ethnicity, nationality, language, some of the culture and social norms, generation, age, even the field of profession that you've chosen. We all are always trying to be mindful of the differences between the colleges and how you all approach research in the different colleges, because it's very different in a lot of ways when you look at how, if you compare maybe the College of Education to the College of Natural Science and Mathematics, or if you look at the creative activities side of how faculty in the arts and the communications and humanities and social sciences approach their work. So we try to be very mindful of how those different cultures also can be different, and how we can best serve you. So I wanted to talk about three things when we think about it from a theoretical background, because I know as you all being faculty researchers, you all want some more meat to this. So there's kind of this three-tier understanding of culture, and the three pieces are beliefs, values, and actions. I want to start with a quote by Gandhi, and I really love this quote. I use it in some of my classes myself. It says, your beliefs become your thoughts become your words become your actions become your habits become your values, and your values become your destiny. And I really think that kind of sums up what I'm trying to say as far as your values, your beliefs, and your actions, but I'm going to go in a little bit deeper into what I mean. But just keep this quote in mind because it's very powerful. So when we look at what a belief is, a recent study showed that by the time we're 4 years old, pretty much all humans have developed 50% of their beliefs, habits, and perceptions. And I thought, wow, that is pretty powerful. By 4, we already have developed that. And we do that through our experiences, our real life experiences, but often we forget that the original experience is not the same as what is happening in life now. And so why I want to mention that is sometimes maybe you had a bad experience with the culture when you were younger. Maybe one person did something that hurt you in high school, and now you don't really like anybody from that particular culture because of that experience. And so we have to be careful that we don't lump people into one group, into one thing just because you've had one bad experience, and that can carry over to you in your adult life and into your research and everything else. The other thing I want to say is that the beliefs that we hold are very important in our lives and our identity. They may be religious, they could be cultural and moral. Beliefs are precious because they reflect who we are and how we live our lives. And then as we talk about pre-existing beliefs, as a researcher and faculty member, the pre-existing beliefs that you may have could be related, like I said before, to stereotypes that have been developed. For example, it could be related to stereotypes you have about gender, power, politics, and language. And that can really impact how you interact with your colleagues when you're collaborating with them on research projects. These stereotypes also, if you make assumptions about colleagues and partners from diverse backgrounds, then you are creating a wedge between the possibilities that you can have in working with them on your research project. And that's one of the things, as you know, when you're doing a grant now externally, almost all agencies require that you have an external collaborative partner or either internal collaborative partner. And a lot of you all should really be thinking about, who am I going to work with? How can I work with them? What can they bring to enhance my existing research? Maybe you work in a particular area and you want to apply for a grant that you could bring someone else in on campus or even off campus that's going to make your grant even stronger. Maybe they're a senior researcher who's had grants in the past, but they also might come from a very diverse background. Please be careful in how you interact and really think about the things you say, because they can be sometimes get in the way and cause conflict that will really hinder you all making progress on that project or even working together. And if you start out on the wrong foot, guess what? If you get the grant, what do you think is going to happen? More than likely, the project's going to continue to go kind of in a negative way because you haven't started out on the right foot. So when we talk about values, basically values are our yardstick, and that's how I look at them. It's the yardstick by which we measure everything, our success, our happiness, okay? And so that's just an easy way to remember it. When we think about values, they can influence the judgments we make as well as have impact on how we interact with one another as researchers. So it is important that we do make our decisions about our colleagues and partners based not on values, okay? If we want to dig deeper into this matter, let's consider some questions about our own value system. So think about manners. Are your manners old-fashioned? Do they hold a high or low value in your life? I mean, because manners go a long way when you're working with people, you know, the small things. Thank you, I really appreciate it. An email sent to someone saying, I really appreciate you providing that data to me. You have pride. Are there things that you need to be proud of? Do you have value in your, do you value pride or do you value humility? Sometimes too much pride, and I find this a lot in research. People come in, they all have wonderful, wonderful knowledge in things. They have expertise to share, but their egos come in the room with them. And what happens? Everyone starts to posture, and then that becomes like, okay, I'm going to be in charge. No, I'm going to be in charge. And we start having, I see these power plays come into the fold. And so you want to really kind of think about, you know, pride's important, but we also have to think about humility as well. Are you a team player? You know, do you value that? Are you big on winning? Do you exhibit a team spirit, or are you more into individuality? When you're working on a grant and you're working on a research project, it's great to have your individuality, but you really got to have that team spirit as well, okay? Your work life. What do you value about your work life and your family life? What do you value about your family life? Because at the end of the day, that's what really matters. I mean, we love our jobs, but we also need to value our home life too and find a way to balance our work and life. And many of you all have young children, and it's a lot. It's a lot to manage. So I want to give you guys a scenario to think about. We have Dr. Cash and we have Dr. Money, and they have become partners in their research together. Now, Dr. Cash has his expertise in STEM education, and Dr. Money is a structural engineer. And they've decided to write a grant, a National Science Foundation STEM education grant. And they're going to be working with a local school district, K through 12 school district. And in this K-12 school district that they're working with, it's a very diverse population of students. Students that are from low socioeconomic backgrounds and students who are students of color predominantly. And so as they start working together, Dr. Dr. Cash continues to make remarks about how this certain group of students are lazy, they don't want to put the work in, and Dr. Money is well connected in this community and actually represents this community very well and feels very offended. And so they started having some disagreements on some of the data they're putting together, and how the narrative is being developed. And so it's already starting out to be problematic. And so they're coming to our office as a research development professional office to help them. So I'm going to ask you all to step into my shoes for a minute and think about if you were put into the situation where you had two faculty members working together with kind of this scenario going on. What would be some strategies that you could employ and to suggest to help resolve these conflicts? How could you be the liaison to smooth things out? Because this is a wonderful opportunity, not just for both faculty, not for the students in the K-12, but for the university as well. And so it's really important that we find ways to figure out how do we work together and how do we work together from diverse backgrounds. So I wanted to also talk about actions. That's the last piece of it. And it says again in that quote from Gandhi that our actions become who we are, basically, our destiny. And so your beliefs and your values should be the basis of your actions. As a research development professional, we want you as a faculty researcher to be successful. People who succeed have very different beliefs than people who fail. And I know, again, like I said, balancing many of you are teaching 3 to 4 classes each semester. Some of you are going up for RTP. Many of you, all of you are required to do scholarship. You have office hours, and then you have your own family life. And so how do I balance those, you're asking? Sometimes you don't feel like you're empowered. And so your actions don't always mirror what you might believe about yourself. You even may be doubting yourself. And so I really like the idea of us trying to, it says here basically, thus, to achieve excellence and success in any area, it requires a positive, powerful, and congruent set of beliefs. And I really believe that. What you believe is how life manifests in itself. And so when you start feeling like overwhelmed, when you start feeling like I can't do this anymore, it's not worth it, what's in it for me kind of thing, I want you to take a step back and I want you to really think about it. Think about how you can, one, relieve some of the stress in your life. And I just read an article that was really interesting. It talked about how we are overwhelmed as faculty. And it said there's this thing they call the big 3 plus 2. What are the 3 things that must be done today? And you put that on your list. And then you add 2 more that you would like to get done. And you've got to get those 3 done. So at the end of the day, those 3 are done. But if you look up and you get those other 2 done, just think how great you feel. So that 3 plus 2 might be a strategy that you can use. Think about it at the night before. What do I need to get done? Top 3 on my list plus 2. Try that. And by all means, we are always here in the Office of Research Development, Office of Grants and Contracts, and Office of Sponsored Programs to find ways to help you also manage your grants and your research so that we can take a little bit of that stress off of you. So when we look at about building trust across cultural boundaries, that's not an easy thing to do sometimes, because in order for us to be able to work together, we have to trust one another. We have to feel comfortable with one another. You are often sharing some of your research and your data with other people, and you're not going to just share it willingly with people that you, one, don't trust and really don't know. And so my thing is, when you're working with people from other cultures, other faculty members on campus, people off campus, community partners, you need to get to know them. You need to take that time to get to know them. And so I really encourage you to start some type of collaborative where you meet regularly so you get familiar with each other. You have an agenda. You keep notes. And you keep in direct contact. It doesn't have to be every month. It could be quarterly. It could be every twice a year, whatever fits your schedule. But one of the things that's really important is that you build a strong partnership that is built on trust, communication, and conflict management. And that's really important. And once you see something happening that you're not happy with, you shouldn't let it go. You should find a way to resolve that conflict with that person. Cultural differences play a key role in the creation of trust, since trust is built in different ways and means different things to different people in different cultures. Don't minimize what other people are telling you. So if you, in your culture, it doesn't mean much, but someone keeps telling you that this particular value or something that you're saying or doing is offensive or bothers them, don't minimize that. That's very important. For example, in the United States, trust is demonstrated over time. Here you can gain the trust of your colleagues by coming through and delivering on your commitments. In many other parts of the world, including Arab, Asia, and Latin American countries, building relationships is a prerequisite for even having any kind of interaction. They have to know you before they even get to know, start working with you. So there's a little bit of disconnect. We build it over time, and they build it up. Some cultures build it on the forefront. And so, if you're working with people from countries, kind of do some research on, how do I interact with people, and what is the customary way and how they do business. Cultural differences in multicultural teams can also create misunderstandings between team members before they even had a chance to even start working together. And that's what I was saying earlier. You've got to get to know people. You've got to take the time. If you really are planning on doing a grant with someone, it could be a 3 to 5 year project. Do you really want to go in on a project where you're already having misunderstandings and then you've got to deal with this person for 3 to 5 years? That's a long time. Anthropologists have discovered that when faced by interaction that we do not understand, we tend to, as people, interpret the others involved as abnormal, weird, or wrong. And we do. We always want to point the finger at someone else rather than looking at what we can do to kind of improve the situation. Awareness of cultural differences and recognizing where cultural differences are at work is the first step toward understanding each other and establishing a positive working environment. Use these differences to challenge your assumptions about the right way of doing things and as a chance to learn new ways to solve problems. So let me talk real quickly about some of the best practices and key strategies for facilitating cultural change. So assumptions might be others are like me, and it might be others aren't like me, right? So an unexpected incident might be that you might question someone's behavior, you might not understand someone's value. So you need to ask yourself, what do you believe or value that led you to take this course of action before? And so what I'm trying to say is, before you start pointing fingers at people or making assumptions about why someone did something on a project, make sure that you really look at yourself and see that you've done everything that you can do, and that it's not something culturally that you just don't understand. And if it is culturally, then you need to come to some kind of understanding with that person of why that particular thing happened and how you can remedy it. Let me show you also some of the differences in the research development professional. Our job here is to protect institutional interest. Our job is also to schedule by rule and work by role. We work and interact with defined rules and roles. We have a chain of command, so you guys always hear that from us. Did you follow protocol? You have to go to this office, and sometimes it's very confusing for you all. We have positional authority that's delegated. So if you all don't do something, then it goes up to the next level. And so then we look at what faculty members value and what they do. And you guys have your own individual interest at heart. You schedule your goals and interests. You schedule by goals and interests. So your schedule is built around what your interests are and what your goals are. You work and interact by your goals and interests as well. And you have a network of, you network, and you work with networks and teams. And you have an expertise and a skill set that's unique to your area. And also, it's perceived, with you all having your doctorates and such, and expertise in certain fields, it's a very prestigious thing that you have. So we also have a cultural disconnect in how we interact with you all as research professionals. And so I just want to keep it in mind, we have the university culture and we have other people's culture. And sometimes those collide, because you'll hear in the university culture we always have, this is the Fullerton way. Well, what does that really mean? And for the Fullerton way in the research development side, it means making sure that even if you have a different sense of time, you have a different way of interacting with people, that the university still expects us to interact in a certain way, in a collegial manner, in a professional manner, in a timely manner. And as you know, all proposals that we send out externally and all the ones that you apply for internally have deadlines that are driven and that are fixed. So you have to learn, even if your culture doesn't dictate time very well, you have to learn how to kind of go with the university culture and assimilate as best you can. So as we continue to talk about some of the differences of culture, here's an example. You have person A. This person is a tenured researcher at a Research 1 level institution. Now, I know we're not a Research 1. They're an American researcher, so they're not foreign-born. They're scientists. They're native of Southern California, and they're a theorist, a bench scientist. And then on the other hand, we have person B, and they are an Asian graduate student who is an English as a second language learner, or an ESL learner. They have a European collaborator that they're working with. They're a humanist. They're a native of New York and New Jersey, even though their family they're not first generation. Their parents came over here and now they're born here. And they're community impact investigators, so they really care about their communities they work for. And so just those two examples can show you how very different types of researchers on campus, but they can work very well together. You know, we have a young investigator working with someone who's more seasoned. This young investigator is a person of color. The seasoned investigator is not. And so it's just a willingness to not think that that younger person has something that can contribute to the research. So how do we bridge the gap between faculty culture and Cal State Fullerton culture? How do we integrate research and teaching? How do we change the culture at Cal State Fullerton? And I really see some great things happening right now. For those of you who are looking at this webinar right now, are in Funding My Research. That's just one program that we're offering to faculty now that can help them learn how to navigate successfully through the research enterprise. And as you know, it is very confusing. We have 3 offices, and then if you add advancement to it, that's 4 offices. And what we're trying to do now is we're trying to establish a one-stop for faculty. We've been funded the National Institutes of Health BRAD grant, which is a biobehavioral, biomedical research administrative development grant that's supposed to improve significantly how we do research here at Cal State Fullerton. And one of our outcomes will be, we have 3 specific aims. Aim 1 is to improve all policies and procedures related to research. 2 is to create a student and PI portal so that faculty and students and even staff can go to one spot, and it's driven by what they need, not this office versus this office. And then the third aim is to look at training. How do we train all of our research development professionals, our grants administrators, and our faculty and students on how to utilize this new way of doing research at Cal State Fullerton. So we're very excited that we're going to be able to bring that to you, but also when you relate it to culture, I think if you have the opportunity to take any kind of diversity training, to interact with people from diverse backgrounds, not just in your own departments and colleges, but across campus, you're going to automatically expand your horizons and also your resources, because you never know what that person can bring to your research. And then I'm going to wrap up by just talking about some Western conflict negotiation strategies. when we look at the Western world and how we deal with some of these cultural differences, we tend to look at winner versus loser. We have a negotiation and confrontation kind of mentality. There's a compromise versus win-win. And we even avoid an attack. And then there's also the whole domination piece of it that's involved. And we really want to move away from those types of behaviors and ways to solve, because they really don't solve problems. They just create more, I think, barriers. And if we look at non-Western conflict negotiation strategies, I think this would really help us when we're doing research in a diverse setting. There's mediation involved. We have a one-down position. We have storytelling involved. And I find storytelling is very interesting because, you know, everyone has something to share about where they've been, where they're going. And that kind of can help you when you know, get to know people. Just hearing a story about what their struggles have been, even when they were in graduate school, or, you know, from being from a diverse background, or what have you. And I think that really helps people see you on the human side, if you will. Sometimes inaction and silence. So sometimes we do nothing. Sometimes just not always having to say something is the best. Just silence, I find, is sometimes resolves things on its own. Yes and no, indefinite persons, misdirection, language patterns. And what I want to talk about with language, again, I think people sometimes have misperceptions of people who have accents, people who have maybe difficulty speaking English. People automatically make assumptions about even our faculty. I hear students complain about it. I hear other faculty complain about other faculty who come from other countries where English is not their first language. I think we really need to reach out and help our colleagues. We also need to be mindful how difficult it is to learn another language. And so what can we do to improve culture and research on campus? These are just a few suggestions. But build relations that include mutual trust. And again, you know how to do that. You just have to learn, take the time, just like when you're teaching your students. I mean, there's a quote that I love, and it says, they don't care what you know until they know that you care. And when I worked in Compton Unified, that was a quote that I thought of often, because our poor children in Compton often thought that no one cared about them. And until they really saw that, they didn't really care what we had to say or how we could help them or how we could teach them. Distinguish between an idea and the person. So even if you have issues with a culture, try to separate what they're saying and what they bring to who they are. Observe and ask non-judgmental questions. Understand the cultural concepts of shame, face, or blame. And again, when we're doing research, we're on time, especially when we're doing grants, we're always on a time frame, deadlines that are coming up really, really fast. And to be honest, we're not always the most patient people at that time. I'll just put it that way. And so we might be very short with people already. We might be very snippy, or you know, and so we don't even realize that we might be saying things that make them feel uncomfortable, or not wanting to work with us. Be cautious about evaluative statements, placing blame or seeking a single cause to a problem. Let's be open-minded. This is a research institution that we can actually have the opportunity to exchange ideas. We don't know everything, and I know I don't. I have my PhD in education. My focus is on African American males, high achieving ones in particular, and I don't know everything even on that topic. So even though we have our expertise, let's allow our colleagues to also share their ideas. Use indirect rather than direct approaches. Use private rather than the public means and settings. So if you have something that's happening with another colleague that you want to address, don't do it in a public meeting on, with other people around. Do it privately, do it professionally, do it collegially. And that way you have a better chance of resolving it. And then reserving time for reflecting is very important. So when we finish doing a grant, in our office, we always kind of sit back as a team and we say, what could we have done differently? How could we have made it easier for faculty? How could we have improved the process? And same with researchers. You need to think about, okay, we worked on this team. It was a very diverse team. Boy, it was stressful. But we got the grant out. Now we're waiting to see if we're going to be funded. You know, what's the next steps? How do we prepare if we're awarded? You know, do some reflection. Identifying a cultural interpreter. If you're not really comfortable in how do I really learn about other cultures in a research setting, I'm here to help you because I teach a lot of diversity classes for the university as well as in African American studies. You want to be an active, reflective listener as well. So if people are giving you feedback and you hear people saying the same thing, maybe they say that you're quick to judge, you know, don't take it personally. That's a growth opportunity for you. But if you're very offensive or offended by it, you're not going to learn from it. Don't be compromising as far as how you deal with people. If you tell people you're going to do something, be to your word. But if you get overwhelmed, you need to let them know right away. Don't wait till the last minute and tell people, oh, you know what, I'm going to have to step off this grant project now, and there's a week away. Don't do that to people. That's how you really start kind of dividing people, and then they don't always look at it as an individual thing. They look at it as well, that's someone's culture. That's how they all are. So don't compromise as far as your ethics of how you work. Be collaborative. If you don't know how to reach out to other folks, I'm here. I love bringing faculty together, both here on campus, and across the local communities. Be adapting, be planful, be organized. My son is a basketball player, and he coaches basketball in high school, and he tells his team all the time, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. And I love that because it's the same thing with research. If we stay ready and stay on top, be planful, be organized, it'll go a lot further for us. We'll have less stress, and we'll be ahead of the game when the grant opportunity comes along. And then the last things is to recognize, respect, and deal with differences. Intercultural communication is not easy. It really isn't. And sometimes we have to tell people hard things that are hard to say. But let's try to do that if we have to in a way that's meaningful, that's going to give them value in some ways for them to grow as well. Gateways to effective intercultural communication include written, oral, and nonverbal communication skills, respect for differences, tolerance of ambiguity, flexibility, suspension of assumptions and judgment, and I'm going to repeat that. Suspension of assumptions and judgments. That's the hard part. Willingness to see the other person's perspective, and time and practice. That's pretty much it. What I'd like to end with is for you all to kind of just think about, how do you see yourself working with others on research projects on campus within your own colleges and departments, across campus, off campus? What role do you play in making it a smooth process, one that also enhances you in your teaching, enhances your students in their learning, and just really, really benefits the university? As you finish this webinar, I would like for you all to just write your thoughts in a reflection and send it to me at the email tfoy@fullerton.edu, just so that we can kind of discuss it when we meet face-to-face again. I thank you for your time. I hope this was useful. It's really just to get you thinking about how do you interact with diverse faculty and other folks on campus and off campus when we're doing research. Have a wonderful semester ahead. Thank you for your time.